So I'm here in Avila, California, and June gloom is in full effect. With the Mavic Air 2 just released, I think it's a good opportunity to take out the OG Mavic Air and see how it does. Let's get to it.
Back in the office here, and with the Mavic Air 2 being released, I thought it was the perfect time to make a video about the Mavic Air 1 in a Mavic 2 world. So I'm sure DJI would like nothing more than for us all to take our Mavic Air 1s and throw them out. Mavic Air 2! O'Doyle rules! And rush to the store to buy a Mavic Air 2 as soon as possible. So let's take a deep dive into some of the differences between these two drones and see if the Mavic Air 2 is really worth it. Now, looking at the website, the first thing you're gonna see is a big sign that says up your game. And the only thing I can think of when they're saying up your game is kind of how they're upping their sensor size. So let's take a look at that sensor size right now. They're bringing a 1/2-inch sensor to the game. 1/2-inch sensor. When you hear that, you're thinking, awesome, this is an unprecedented upgrade. This is gonna be amazing. I can't wait for that 1/2-inch sensor. Well, the Mavic Air 1 has a 1 by 2/3 sensor. I know some people have posted that it's a 2/3 sensor, but basic math dictates that 2/3 is bigger than a 1/2, so a 1/2 would be a downgrade. So I'm sure that hopefully people don't think those two are the same, or hopefully they don't get too confused. In any case, the differences between them are so marginal. I'm gonna go ahead and show you this graph right here. So when you take a look at the differences between the sensor sizes, you can tell that it is a very, very marginal upgrade over the Mavic Air 1. It's not a Mavic Air 2 Pro or Mavic 2 Pro. It is a bridge between the two, and when you look at an overlay of the two sensor sizes, you can see there's almost no difference at all in the sensor size. So when you map out, when you do a little bit of calculations, just taking the area difference is only 4%. So it's not going to be a low light monster like they're showing in their advertisements about how you're going to be able to fly over cities at night, get these amazing looking images. That's just not going to happen. It's just not realistic. So the next area that DJI is really pushing is their 4K 60 ability. And while that's cool, it really only applies to a small group of people that need to shoot action, and they feel that action would look better from the sky. The only other thing about that I'd like to mention is the fact that they have a 120 megabit per second codec for that. And while that's an improvement over the 100 megabit per second of the Mavic Air 1, it still has to be divided into 60 frames a second if you're going to shoot at 60 FPS. So for those of you not familiar with that megabit terminology, you're going to want to look into that. Maybe just Google it real quick and you'll find out pretty quickly that megabits per second is quite a bit smaller than megabytes per second. Especially for you photography people out there, you know that a lot of your pictures are megabytes and they're huge. These are megabits, and those frames are significantly smaller. So if you break it down, if you shoot 60 frames per second at the codec, which is 120 megabits per second, you're gonna get roughly 2.5 megabits per frame. Now, that breaks down to like 0.3 megabytes. It's really, really small. And when you have that thin of a codec, you're really going to increase the likelihood of artifacts, as well as just that compression in the background, just the stuff that looks bad, the aliasing and things like that. Okay, and when you shoot 24 frames a second, obviously it's significantly better. In the Mavic Air 2, it's going to be a 5 megabits per second codec instead of the Mavic Air 1, which is like 4.2 approximately. So even that small increase right there is marginal. I don't know that it's worth the upgrade if you're going to do it just for that. I shoot at 24 frames a second, and I feel like from the sky, everything is already moving so slowly, I really don't need the 60 frames per second. And the 24 frames per second also gives you the better codec, or at least the beefier codec per frame. However, if you are shooting scenes that would really benefit from the slow motion, then this upgrade alone may be worth it for you. Okay, some of the areas that are improvements but not earth-shattering are the improvement to flight time, which is awesome. I think it's 31 minutes up from 22 minutes or something like that. So an additional 10 minutes approximately flight time, which is awesome. But the batteries were so affordable with the Fly More combo that you could just swap them out, and I've never flown drone for more than an hour to get a shot. The H.265 codec is also an awesome improvement in that it's going to compress a little bit more information there, and you will hopefully burn through less SD cards when you're out in the field shooting. But once again, battery limitation is probably going to be more of a limit for you than SD cards. They're super. This brings me to what I believe are the most redeeming qualities for the Mavic Air 2. And that is, number one, that OcuSync 2.0. At least that's what they call it, where you're able to have really, really good connection between you and your drone. If you are like me and you've flown your drone over the ocean or in an area that might have been compromising, maybe you wouldn't have been able to get there in time and lost connection, it's a scary feeling. That's happened to me, and I will say I was definitely sweating, hoping that the connection came back. And so hopefully that OcuSync 2.0, that better connection, fixes that issue. And in all honesty, just for that alone, I was thinking about it. It got me thinking, OcuSync 2.0, is that worth the upgrade for me? Yeah, outside of that, the only other area that's a huge improvement is the photo side of things. The other area that's a solid improvement is on the photography side of things. At 48 megapixels, it's a huge improvement over the Mavic Air 1's 12 megapixel sensor. Now, the only thing that I would worry about in that situation is, now that you know the sensor size is only marginally 4% bigger, I think it's still going to struggle in low light, even more so in fact, now that they've jammed all those pixels in such a small area. So to wrap everything up, I've been using the Mavic Air for a little over a year, and there's only one thing that I really wish I could improve on, and that is noise in the shadows, even at ISO 100. And this is a well-known issue that most people with the Mavic Air have already experienced, know about. It's talked about often on the forums. So if DJI could fix that, I would be a happy camper, that's for sure. With the Mavic 2 Air, my concern is that I think the shadows are going to potentially be worse, being that the 48 megapixel sensor is jammed into such a small size. And so for that reason alone, for me, Mavic Air 2 is a no-go. I think the Mavic Air 1 is amazing. It's done great for me for the past year, and I think will continue to do so for me for the next year or so to come. However, some people can't wait to upgrade, so my recommendation right now is it might be the time to pick up a Mavic Air 1. The Mavic Air 1 is more than capable for professional work or adventures that you would like captured from the sky. Hopefully this was helpful. If you want to support the channel, like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. See you next week. I have to go back and get it.